Excellent,
Okay.
and welcome to the TAD Summit online conference. We are going to be discussing Erlang RED, and we have Jarrett, the author, creator of Erlang RED. We have Sam, who is a friend of TAD Hack, TAD Summit. I've known for many, many, many years, and as I described, my Node RED guru, and of course Slava. Slava is basically it's all his fault. The reason we're here talking, so he's the blame post. But really, Jarrett, please, I'm so happy you're here. Please provide an introduction to Erlang RED.
Okay, will do. Thanks, Alan, for having me. Thanks, Slava, for organizing it, by the way. Thank you for that. Exactly. So what is Erlang RED? It's basically the front end of Node-RED with an Erlang backend. And it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while. I'm kind of, I wasn't new to Erlang. I knew about Erlang and I've programming in it. And just one day, someone posted something about doing a Python backend for Node-RED. I saw commented say it's actually better to do it in Erlang because Erlang is better suited to flow-based programming, which is the paradigm.
Yeah,
So, and yeah, and I so sat down and I thought, well, how hard can it be? uh, it turns out it's not that hard. I have to say, proviso to that is that before I started on the project, I've been working with Node-RED for like 2 years now, 2.5 years now, and mainly playing around with the editor,
gotcha.
doing the front end stuff, because that's kind of I've been extending it to do visual comparisons, to a bunch of nodes that I needed, and all this kind of stuff. And so I've sort of developed an understanding of how the front end works, the
Hmm.
the editor works, and so it wasn't that hard to say, okay, good, which APIs do I need in the back end to get it working? And
Gotcha.
turns out it's like 5 or 6 API endpoints that you need, and then you get a big JSON, and then in this JSON are all the nodes, and
Gotcha.
so then you just take that and create some Erlang code, right?
Oh,
And so
cool.
yeah, and I started out and did the first node was the inject node, simplest node, and the debug node, and it's
Yeah.
like, whoa, look at this, it's working, great. And then the next thing is like, oh, I want to do some JSON art, which is like a transformational language in Node-RED. And then, okay,
Mhm.
so how do I do that? Okay, I'll build a parser. Okay, so I'll build an Erlang parser, and etc. etc. It just grew out of that kind of
Gotcha.
things. And yeah, I really enjoy working on it. I think it doesn't actually have an application at all. I think I think this is telecommunication conference, and so Slava was also asking me online, asking me, so like, okay, so we need an example which is telecommunication based for Erlang RED, and I was just go, I don't really have an example, and it's so in the end, it's more of an experiment to see how
Hmm.
well it works with Erlang, like how
Yeah,
flow-based programming works with Erlang,
exactly.
and yeah, and so whatever comes out of that is above and beyond what I expected. So
Gotcha. No,
let's
no,
put it
no.
that
I
way.
mean, that's the key. I mean, it's experimentation. Never be afraid to experiment. So, what are some of the application areas that you're seeing in flow-based programming?
Well, that's, I mean, what can I say? I mean, flow-based programming is mainly used for IoT, right? So that's where Node-RED comes from.
Gotcha.
Home automation, all this kind of stuff. And when I got into Node-RED, I couldn't use IoT, and I don't have any home automation. I don't automate anything at home, so I was still
Okay.
kind of stuck. What can I do with Node-RED? And I came to Node-RED via Yahoo Pipes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Interesting.
I loved your Yahoo Pipes. Like Yahoo Pipes is for me like, wow, this is crazy. This is really good. It's like, and then it died. It
Yes.
died with Yahoo,
Yeah.
and I've been looking for a replacement ever since. And that's when I come to Node-RED, and right,
Ah,
Node-RED is all this IoT stuff, and I was like,
yeah.
well, I don't do any IoT, but what I do is web. And so I was
Gotcha.
thinking, like, can I create an API backend using Node-RED?
Yeah.
So then can I do like HTTP requests and return JSON and stuff like that? And it turns out you can.
Yeah.
So my first project was to develop like an API backend using Node-RED. So application for me is building a web-based
Yeah.
backend, right? So
Interesting.
yeah, and I think that's sort of kind of the thing, because I don't come from industry, I don't come from IoT, I come from a completely different planet, space. And so it was, for me, it's like, can I do this with Node-RED? And can I
Interesting.
do this with
Yeah,
Node-RED?
yeah, yeah.
And I've been doing all sorts of stuff with Node-RED, and I haven't found anything that I can't do with Node-RED. So
Interesting.
that means, that implies also that you really can do everything with flow-based programming as well,
Yes.
right?
Yep. Yeah,
So
good point. Now, because of the
yeah.
web focus, I mean, Elixir is a common language. So, I mean, rather than Erlang, have you been looking at Elixir or?
I thought about it, but because I assumed, well, I kind of assumed that Elixir takes away the concurrency and the overloading of methods, and basically it takes all the message passing as well. So it takes a little bit away from Erlang, and that's exactly
Gotcha.
what flow-based programming is all
Understood.
about. So
Understood.
yeah, so, but it turns out, I mean, Erlang or Elixir doesn't really take that much away from
Yeah.
Erlang. But on the other hand, I'm sick of doing Ruby. I spent my time doing Ruby. And I actually dislike the syntax, and I
Okay.
really like the syntax of Erlang and the
Gotcha.
concepts behind Erlang. So that's basically, it's just a taste
Yep.
question with me. Yeah.
Understood. Understood. Okay. No, no. I mean, it's all around personal preference, you know? I mean, Slava, does that jive with your understanding around, the issues with Elixir versus native Erlang?
Yeah, right. It's it's all dependent also to the areas to where you try to evolve the project itself.
Yeah.
Because, well, Erlang Red right now is, from my understanding, is not ready for the production, Jared, right? Or it's already pretty close.
Well, I mean, that's the question. I mean, what is ready for production? I mean, if I open my app or my telephone has a continuing updates of apps, I mean, are these apps production ready, or are they being released? I mean, the term production ready for me is like, well, I haven't tested it in production. No, I haven't, but it won't be production ready unless it gets tested in production. But it's not production ready, so it won't get tested in production. So
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
got this
yeah.
sort of like, yeah, and as long as no one tries it out, it won't be production ready. Well, on the other hand, I'm doing my best to do good code, right? And
Hmm.
I've got enough tests to say, okay, this stuff is working,
Yeah.
and so you know, and it's also it is a case of like, what is this application? What
Yeah,
for? What can I use it? And
I think that's the thing, isn't it? The production ready these days is a little bit meaningless because software is everywhere, and like there's production ready if you're doing medical patient monitoring level, and then there's
Yeah.
production ready for like managing my to-do list and like my shopping list, and just this concept that there's a binary switch of production ready or not, and it's kind of there's especially with open source, there's so much stuff out there which is like, yeah, it's probably good enough if you know what you're using it for and you understand it, and there's maybe not kind of enterprise ready, as in just throw it at some major Fortune 500 company and then expect it to work without somebody babysitting. It's the level of babysitting and monitoring it needs for an
Exactly.
application
Yeah.
compared to that's really what production, or what's your production environment look like.
Yeah.
What's
yeah,
it doing?
yeah.
How closely do you monitor it? I mean, the smart home stuff is classic. I still have kind of, is it wife ready? It's like there's stuff like he gets home and like, right, so all of the lights in my house controlled through Node-RED. You come in and I have a custom stack smart home that's bits of map, but literally you have like little BLE buttons. You press a button that is glued over the light switch when you walk in the room, and that turns the lights on. And that 99.9% of the time, kind of, when she gets in from work and turns the lights on and they don't work, like, so,
Yes.
yes, it's now ready for that. But I have other stuff, which is I have a separate development smart home where I test stuff before I put it into my production home. And again, it's stuff like I'll put up with. So like the lights in my office often get upgraded first because if the lights in the kitchen have to be more available.
Exactly. It needs to
Okay, so
work. And if she has to call technical support, then
Yeah.
pissed mist. You will arrive home and the house will be full of pissed mist.
yeah, okay. So I'll go out, I'll lean out the fence, out the door and or out the window and say, Erlang's red, RED is production ready for light bulbs. Okay, so at your home, if you want to turn on your light bulbs with the Erlang RED, do that. It's fine.
Yeah, but I wouldn't start running. I wouldn't run Verizon off it or something.
No,
absolutely. So when you sorry, go for it.
I just wondering if regarding to the production stuff. My question is, the each owner of the product or the project itself in the GitHub, whatever. Yes, I already know the project and have the list of the knowing issues, for example, and which one need to implement in the future, for example, right? And the question is, for now, from my understanding, the Erlang RED is supported the desktop version, like we can open it in the desktop itself. But does it, for example, was tested on the table, for example, or in the mobile phone somewhere, or how the front end part looks like there, how it's deal with this, for example?
Okay. The front end, because the front end is using Node-RED, and Node-RED, you can't use Node-RED on your mobile phone. Don't do it. It doesn't work.
No, out of push. It is. You can use it on an iPad, I would say. So it does have a bunch of touch, and again, coming back to one thing, I have occasionally done it, and it's very, very tedious. You can go in and edit one node, but yes, it's yeah. I mean, I think that's a case in the editor, but yeah, it's certainly works on. It's pretty good on an iPad. An iPad with a keyboard and a mouse actually is quite a nice way of doing it.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay. So exactly, I should also point out, I mean, this is the editor. If you had a dashboard, which is also part of Node-RED, then of course that dashboard is designed to be mobile and whatever. So there's many layers to Node-RED. I think that's also for anyone who's not used Node-RED before, go out and use it. So this discussion actually makes sense. I think we're talking at a very high level here. The thing is, so what I've done with Erlang RED is to take all those features, all those Node-RED features in the editor, and just transport them. So, and the point being here is also to take 10 years of experience, Node-RED being 10 years old, and it's a great piece of software, and just saying, okay, just port that to Erlang, right? Instead of saying, okay, I like the ideas of flow-based programming, let me rebuild an entire client and the backend and just imitate what Node-RED is doing. Right? So this is kind of my explicit intention was to take exactly Node-RED. Whether I will maintain the editor with the new versions of Node-RED, it's probably not going to be doing that. I'm probably going to stick to one version of the editor and just modify it as I need it.
Okay.
Because my aim is also with Erlang RED is to develop that for developers. So Node-RED is designed for non-programmers to use.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And I'm explicitly looking for Erlang RED to be like a tool to use by Erlang developers and not by non-coders. Right. So I want some more features in that editor to make life easier for a developer.
Gotcha.
So that's also another thing I'm doing.
Yeah. And what's your view on this? Because I'm really interested to get your take, Sam, as you look at Erlang and all the benefits that come from that, decades of experience and community. Will you see the opportunities, or is your view, Node-RED game over?
It's interesting. It's what Gareth said, that it's a different audience, and I think that was very telling, because I think the idea of sort of actually my first impression, if you like, when Alan just said, what's this Erlang RED thing? I was like, I hadn't actually come across it, and I was a bit like, okay, so it's using the editor, but it felt a bit like, why would you just rewrite, like replace the back end, keeping the, because I mean there was something around being flow compatible, and I think that was the thing that was a bit of a red flag that stuck out to me with the flow compatibility in Erlang RED with Node-RED, and I'd be interested to, maybe I've misunderstood it, right? But the idea that you would, the first impression is, oh hey, I can take my flow I've built in Node-RED with probably all these custom nodes and just run it under Erlang, and it'll be more performant because JavaScript performance is terrible. Actually, that's and it's like, well, that's never going to work, because, and I think one thing people don't realize, and I still see this in the Node-RED user community all the time, is here's my flow. How do I just run this they assume that the flow is the code, and the flow isn't all of the code, or rather it's because the nodes, the actual JavaScript is in the individual node packages. Some of them are built in, a lot of them, I think I just looked,
5,550. I looked as
yeah,
well.
we just hit a really nice round number, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, of pieces of JavaScript code.
Yes.
And you have to actually really get all of that JavaScript code, and all the flow is a arrangement of that and configuration of that code, but it's not the code.
Yeah.
Okay, let me address that, Sam. So my claim is, to have 100% compatibility. So literally, I really want to be able to take my Node-RED flow and just port it over to Erlang RED and let it run there, right? Literally, right? Not possible. Of course, it's not possible. It's just like AI telling me that AI is going to solve the entire work problems of the world. It's not going to do, but it's great marketing, right? So this is part of my marketing strategy to say, okay, I want to be aiming for 100% compatibility, right? And it's a serious aim. It's something that I really want to be doing, because it's not, and it's also not because of performance. I'm not really interested. I don't really care about JavaScript performance versus Erlang performance, right? For me, it's more about spreading the word about flow-based programming. So it's the level above. Right?
Yeah.
So part of my project is also to create a test suite of visual unit tests, test the compatibility between Node-RED and Erlang RED, right? So I have all these tests that run in Node-RED and they go through and they work. Then I take them, put them in Erlang RED, and make sure they work there as well.
Gotcha.
Now, this test suite, because it's flow-based and it's visual, can be used for another project like Rust RED or Python RED, and they can use these flows to test their implementation, right? So that's part of the project as well. Is to say, okay, it's to have this compatibility testing as well, right?
So what about the actual nodes themselves? So you're re-implementing. You said you started off with the inject node, the debug node, the switch node, or whatever. Obviously, yes, you can probably re-implement the core nodes, the bundled nodes in Node-RED, but you're never going to be able to re-implement the matter nodes that I've written, for example, in Node. I mean, is there you looking at some sort of, I'm trying to think, like, can you run like a contain like JavaScript engine under Erlang, or that sounds like horrible hacks, and
of course I could. I mean, there's of course these 5,550 nodes packages. I'm not going to sit down and recode all of them. I mean, I'm not that autistic. Okay? I'm slightly autistic, but not that autistic.
We'll just get AI to do it. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God.
QED. All right, we're out of here. No, but I mean, the thing is, to give people also the idea, because one thing that happened was that the supervisor behavior, right? So I went over to Erlang and I started playing around. So building all these nodes. And then I discovered the supervisor pattern, which is basically, for you, Sam, I don't know whether you know it, it's, you have processes in Erlang, and then you have the supervisor that says, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to supervise these 5 processes. If one of them dies, I'm just going to restart it automatically, right? And that's great. I mean, that's because you can, you've got a stable system, you've got a self-healing system. If something falls down, you have a supervisor, it restarts it. Hey, that's a great concept, And so when I discovered that, I was like thinking about it. I was in Erlang RED. Do I make that visual? Do I create a supervisor node that you can drag into a flow and say, these 5 nodes over here, if they die, restart it, and you see that visually? Do I want to do that, or do I want to hide that away? Because that concept, that supervisor concept, does not exist in Node-RED, right? So what am I doing? Do I go, oh, am I going to be incompatible now? Am I going to have flows in Erlang RED which aren't compatible with Node-RED? What am I going to do? I decided to have a supervisor flow so that you can have this concept, which is a great concept, and I'm hoping it will get backported to Node-RED, so that then the Node-RED people go, oh, wait, this is cool. So we can actually, it's like a catch node, which catches exception to any other node, but it does the other thing. It goes around the other way. It says, okay, are you still running? Okay, you're not running. Okay, I'll restart you and make sure that the flow continues to work. Right.
I suppose that's interesting as to in Node-RED how many of the nodes themselves are, is a node actually running in most? I mean, there's a few.
No.
I guess you've got nodes which are you've got sort of nodes. Well, most nodes, and if you're talking about HTTP, they're usually running underneath the HTTP Express server and
Exactly.
and anyway.
Yeah.
But even if you're talking about, like, I don't know, the serial port node or some of the hardware ones, certainly you've got nodes which are talking to the outside world, which are sort of, because they're we don't really have a term for them other than I was thinking, initiator nodes or starting nodes. They're always ones that they don't have an input, they only have an output, and usually because they are triggered by something happening in the outside world. This is the event concept. So they have to be listening to whatever that external trigger is, be that hardware, file system, network, whatever. And so yes, those absolutely, and those can die. So yeah, I can see that sort of supervising concept in those being useful. I mean, the others though tend to be a flow execution then, don't they?
But you're saying it, Sam. I mean, this is the problem in Node RED. It looks like you have these nodes that are all independent of one another, because that's flow-based programming, right? So you have these nodes and you think, oh, each of them are independent, but they're not really in Node RED. In Node RED, it's one conglomerate, it's one engine that's running all these nodes, right? Erlang RED, each node is a separate process, right? So each of those nodes that you see are separate processes. They can die, and they won't affect the rest of the nodes, right? So it's taking advantage of that Erlang concept of process.
I guess in Node RED, I've always more thought of nodes as being more like functions within my code than But again, coming at it from a Node and Python developer background, it's been more like and again, it's something I see a lot of people do is in Node RED, they, especially with the function node, actually, or they create massively complex nodes. And they bundle everything in this node, like the node is the whole application. And it's like, oh, it does this. You send it in and it sends it out. And it's like, no, breaking it down into smaller individual discrete components, because you're creating a language, you're creating functions that should be discrete. And it's very difficult to say what should be the context, if you like, the scope of an individual node. When I designed the node package for the Nexmo API, and then we have the one with Jambones, and I've done a few other ones like that. And there's definitely a little bit of skill product design in looking at the thing you're implementing and working out what to put into individual nodes. Should that be one node? Should that be multiple nodes? Should it have lots of config options? But it's very much like a function, I think, in your writing code, and therefore it's discrete, it's reusable. To me, a node is a function within your code, individual discrete component, and then you have the data passed to that function that does something and passes it to the next function. But how does that sort of relate in Erlang RED then, Garrett?
Okay, so for Erlang RED, you have processes. So that's another thing. So these nodes are functions. Yes, they're discrete, individual. It's like a Unix concept. It's a Unix pipe concept basically. That's one of the first things that when I started out Node RED was, okay, this is like Unix pipe, visual Unix pipe. Okay, so that means these nodes are utilities, and each node has a specific thing that it does, and it only does one thing. Right, and one does that one thing well, and that's a node, and that's sort of, for me, what a node looks like. Now in Erlang RED, a node becomes a process, right? But that doesn't really mean much, because in Erlang, a process is anything and everything, right? So a process isn't limited either. So it doesn't really help us to sort of try to identify what a node is, right? So.
I want to just add regarding this stuff that for the understanding regarding the process flow in the Erlang itself. First of all, we need to understand that they are pretty limited, pretty small, and you can create billions of the processes in the 1 or 2 gigabytes of the RAM itself, and this will be not a big problem. And mind stuff that each process is isolated from the full system. So this means that if we will be create 1,000 of them, and some of them will be just died by some reason, like issues with the code, with the handling, etc., the another system will be continue living, and the supervisor, as the boss mentioned, that it will be have the strategy for the restarting of them, or you can say that you need to restart. Another point what we need to understand that each process can have all the functions, for example, or can have the full application itself. So, for example, like you mentioned it, Sam, that you create some integration with the Nextmo, right? Nextmo, by the way, also write it, but the backend side also write it on the Erlang TP itself. So, for your understanding here. So, and the main point here that Erlang TP was created for the telecom itself, right? And the stuff like SIP or handling of the diameter or radius protocols, or try to send in SMS or so, and creating another stuff, they can be packaged to some small applications and run it inside of the process itself, and the processes can communicate between between the nodes by the sending small messages, and it will be done all from the box itself. So you do not need to make additional integration over the TCP or the HTTP or WebSockets, wherever. So you can manipulate with all these data in the server itself. Yeah.
Okay. So can I ask a question, Garrett? About just, I mean, sorry, if you have a process runs, but so would you spin up multiple? If you have a load of messages coming through, and so would it spin up multiple instances of the process in Erlang RED for every message to handle, or is it you only ever have one? If I've got let's call it a send message node, and I send an event into that node, that will be run by that process, but it'll only, how does it scale up the number of processes? Or
it does. I mean, the processes, the scaling of the process is not related to messages, because Erlang has message passing built into the processes. So each process has a message queue, right? And what happens is you push in a message onto that message queue for that process, right? And that is interestingly a very nice, has a nice side effect, because you can actually have a process being synced on the messages. So that means the messages get handled atomically. That means you're in a concurrent world. All these processes are running in parallel concurrently, but each message is being handled by each process atomically. So that means you can have a very nice way of changing state. So in node state, it's represented in the process as its process state, right? And that's guaranteed to be atomically changed. So that's great, So if this concurrent world, but you still have a point where you can say, I can synchronize on one single message, right? So what I do,
and then the object that's passed between the processes can't be, you don't have this problem where one node does something and it changes how it was in a previous one, because it's
nope.
because
Erlang has this. Exactly. This is another nice thing about Erlang, is that it has non-changeable and immutable data sets as a data object. So what I'm passing as a message is a hash, just a hash object, and it gets passed from each node, between nodes, and it's immutable. So that means if a node does make a change to that message, it actually recreates that message and then sends it on. Right, so you don't have this in Node RED in the backend. You have all this cloning code. So how to clone an object to make sure that you don't change an object that is being referenced by another node, right? And you don't have that in Erlang RED, because Erlang doesn't have this, right? Because it's all immutable.
I guess it's more the design patterns of Node RED as to once a node has done its thing, it shouldn't be kind of long running. It like the message should be stopped. The concept there is that once a node has acted on the message and sent and done its send, like it shouldn't act on the message again.
Exactly.
But that's a design pattern in Node RED, if you like. But some people
no. That comes from flow-based programming. That's the concept. The underlying concept flow-based program is that you take a message and it's unique to you, and when you pass it out, you've left it. It's gone.
Done.
So you implement that in JavaScript, where everything's a reference, and you start getting problems. You have problems because okay, so I'm passing that object to this other node over here, but it's a reference. So it's actually the same object. So I have to clone it and stuff like that. So that's the kind of thing that flow-based programming isn't well suited to JavaScript because of this factor.
Okay, yeah.
On the other hand, Erlang, because it is immutable, you just get this for free. You get messages. You don't have to clone these hashes anymore. They're just there for free, right? Just as the message passing comes for free. And there's a lot of features of Erlang which match really well to flow-based programming, and that's what I take advantage of.
I can totally see. I've done a very little bit of Erlang, or at least I've interacted with. I don't think I've ever written anything, but I've managed a few systems, and yeah, suddenly came flooding back with the supervisor and things. I've been doing some billing stuff at EBT years ago, and there was Erlang involved in that, but. Yeah, and it's interesting. I can see your points that how yes, it makes a lot of sense for flow-based programming. I still think the Node-RED association or the risk of confusion is the thing that it's difficult, isn't it? Because it's a kind of a fork, but
yes,
are you ready for the
fork?
Well,
exactly. What is it? What is it? Yeah, exactly.
What is it? Is it a fork? Is it a a clone, but again, the open source thing, what happens when you have the people bombarding you with issues of why doesn't my flow work? Why can't I install this node? Like people, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, and they'll look at the UI, and I think this is the problem is people, and again, and this is why Node-RED and flow-based programming things are great, is people are very visual. People understand visual stuff a lot more. So they see something and they make instant decisions based on what they see, which is often why I think sometimes code is harder for people to, because it's not very visual. They have to actually read and understand versus, oh yeah, this looks like one of these. I've seen this. This is Node-RED. So Node-RED already has theming, but I wonder, you're thinking to almost need to make Erlang RED look less like Node-RED.
Well. To be honest, actually, I don't.
Okay.
I want people to get confused. I want people to be starting to think, about flow-based and visual programming. Part of what I'm doing is making visual programming popular. This is what I've been doing with Node-RED for the last 2 years, right? And now, Erlang RED is kind of like an approach to say, okay, now I'll approach a new community, the Erlang community, and introduce them to visual programming via a Node-RED-like programming environment, right? Now, of course, it's going to be confusion. And it's like, oh, well, that's great. People get confused. They might actually start thinking about what this is. So, and on the other hand, also, I didn't plan any of this, right? So, this idea that, I had this great vision in my head and I'm just going to, create a test suite. I want to create a JSON-art parser, just for everyone watching. JSON-art is like a big part of Node-RED, and you need to have that in order to have any tool that's worth using. And so I had to create a JSON-art parser in Erlang. And it was like, oh, okay, let's just do it, right? And then also got this layer of Elixir compatibility, because there's a lot of packages in Elixir which Erlang doesn't have. And I don't want to re-implement everything. So, so I have to have some sort of Elixir integration, all this kind of stuff. And now the most recent thing is OTP. So now people come from the Erlang community have come to me and said, do you have OTP compatibility? And I go, what is that? What is OTP? What does it mean to be compatible with OTP, right? Yeah. And basically it just turns out, so the main part of OTP, as I understand compatibility, is that things just don't die, that things just, processes get restarted again automatically. Now, I don't do that. Erlang RED actually allows things to die, process to die, because if I want something not to die, then I use a supervisor node, right? So I'll pull in a supervisor node and say, okay, these nodes over here, they're not allowed to die. And those are the processes. So they get recovered via, and so you're putting that into your flow, into your program type of thing. So that's where I say it can be OTP compatible if you make it so. Okay. But Erlang RED won't do that for you.
Mhm.
And that's part of the aim, because I want to, because Erlang RED is also a teaching tool. So what is Erlang? So what is Erlang? Or Erlang is this, here's a node, that's a process, here's the supervisor, that supervises, okay, so that's how a supervisor works. So you can also use that. Right? So this is it's not, I've got no bigger aim other than to bring across visual programming to a new community and to see how they interact with this kind of concept of visual programming.
How are you doing that in the UI? So it's an interesting change about the supervisor node being associated with the actual nodes you want it to monitor. So it's one of the challenges I've had with a couple of other packages I've been working on and things I'm looking at doing in Node RED today, that we have links with nodes, but there's no concept in the UI of kind of like putting nodes inside nodes, really, and there's subflows and things, but I'm never quite sure. I'm just intrigued what your UX for that kind of. So how is a supervisor node attached today to monitor the node?
Just like in a catch node. So the catch node, you have this selection thing, and you can select the nodes you want, and then it has a list of nodes. That's what I took. That
okay, yeah, that sort of makes sense. Yeah, so there's no current way of kind of physically it's in the config, isn't it? It's not and I think that's always the thing I found a bit with the catch nodes, that it's not visual, and it's probably one of the UI weaknesses of Node RED, where it starts to break down, is that there's no sort of like, you always want to be able to like encapsulate nodes within nodes, or group them, or some other kind of concept.
Well, you do have the groups, so you can group them. So you have a catch node, and you say you put all the nodes in that group, and then you have a group around that. So you can do that visually. Again, it's not automatic.
Yes, but that's pure. That's not really sort of, that's doing the grouping is just a just a visual, just a UI thing. It doesn't actually associate them, does it? You have to do
actually, yes, you can. You can say in the catch node, you can say all the nodes in this group. So this is an option to say, okay, build a group, put the catch node in that, and then all the nodes that being put into that group, it will catch all the exceptions of those nodes, right? So of course, I didn't do that with the supervisor node, but I could also do that. So then you have because what you're talking about, Sam, is that you have a disassociation. You say, okay, I've configured it to make these nodes, but then I've taken one out, but it's not visually changing anything. So I've got a configuration and that kind of stuff. So you can do it by the grouping of the catch node.
I've never noticed. It's interesting. I've never noticed that catch all layers from in same group option. I don't know how long that's been there.
I don't know when Nick came up with it or when it was put there, but
the selected node. I've always used selected nodes, because normally I've always been catching a single node. So
exactly. Same here.
Cool.
So
So this
exactly. So
go for it.
No, sorry. Continue, Alan.
Yeah. No. So this is an interesting discussion, because I think who's the audience? How are we trying to basically bring up this flow-based programming? Because expanding the community, around Node RED, but also not trying to confuse the community with this particular topic. But you know how it is, because again, Vance Shipley describes his first experiences in Erlang, and he built an app, and he came back the next day, and customer was happy, it was still running, but there were tons of errors, and it was the supervisor was just capturing all the failovers. So there is a community that loves the supervisor, that sees it as a key feature, and helping them use a UI UX that potentially familiar with, but is extended. I don't know. I think this is an interesting topic, and it's been really interesting to see the discussion between yourself, Jared, and Sam in trying to understand, well, how does this fit together? Because I think there is power, there is value there, but again, it's not trying to confuse developers.
Well, I mean, I think it's not to try to confuse developers. Why not? I mean, why not put something out there, to say, okay, wait a minute, I don't understand this, Well, fine. This is when I started out with Node RED, I didn't understand it. The first time I opened up Node RED, I go, what do I do now? Right. And then eventually, I drag Node in here. Okay, so what do I do now?
Yeah.
You know,
and this is the thing with open source, though, with tooling, platforming, and it's not a visual thing, it's not a Node-RED thing, it's almost a how not to the thing when you confuse developers is, and even commercial products, APIs, it comes down to the quality of your documentation. And unfortunately, it's also the thing where open source, I'm equally as guilty of this as anybody. We're terrible at documenting because nobody ever really wants to write the documentation.
Yeah.
The person that wrote the thing is always the worst person to document the thing because they understand it and they don't know what is missing. But it's and this is where, and having worked in those kind of teams in commercial, CPaaS platforms and things, you need a big bunch of people to write the documentation to explain things, or you end up answering the same tickets over and over again on GitHub or on issues and explaining things to people. And it's great when the project's small and you're like, hey, I'm getting engagement, people are using it, they're asking me questions. And in 6 months' time, you're like, I've got 400 unanswered issues. All of these people why do they not understand the thing? Why do they not? So yeah, I think it's good, but it's documentation, videos, but it's it's the iceberg piece of a project, isn't it? Actually, I've created the thing, but you don't realize all of that stuff that's underneath the water that needs to be done to wrap it, to make it so that people understand it. And that's why we have stuff like this. And I've understood some stuff and things already on Erlang RED, but that's the challenge, I guess.
Yeah,
I think also as so my feeling is that Node-RED is kind of niche. I remember I know this is debatable whether Node-RED is niche or not, but when I posted on LinkedIn that I was doing Erlang RED, I saw posted. I said, okay, I'm combining two niche components. I'm combining Erlang, which is completely niche, and Node-RED, which is completely niche. So I'm creating the nichest project ever, right? And of course, I think the CJ from Flowforce came in and said, no, it's not niche. Node-RED is not niche. It's like, dude, it is. All right.
I think it depends on your definition of niche. There's niche as in it fits one specific vertical, which absolutely Node-RED is not niche in that sense. You can do everything.
Yeah.
Then there's actually, in the grand scheme of programming and software development things, it's a relatively small user base. And I think in that sense, yes, it is. I think that's probably depends what you mean by niche versus small.
Exactly.
It's very broad appeal, but relative. I mean, as a visual programming tool, and for where it is, it's. I think actually interesting. They just started getting some stats in. So the latest version of Node-RED 4.1 or something is now for the first time reporting usage back.
Yeah.
It's opt-in and everything.
Yeah.
But Nick does share them with the community. So he's only had, I'm just looking, latest telemetry stats. So I think the unique pings, so unique daily launches or something, was 14,000 within, what's that? So from end of July, so in just over a month. So this is only new upgrades and things. There's 14,000 installs. But I mean, that's still pretty small when you compare it to Python or anything like that. But when you look at other, and actually, I mean, none of mine probably count on that because I've not upgraded most of the instances I'm running and things, But
I don't either.
Yeah. But until you need to, or at some point you're like, right, I've got the time to do that. Yeah.
Exactly.
But what I was going to say, because I don't want to go too far away from this point. The point is that I've come to realize that something like Erlang RED is not going to be easily, like if Node-RED hasn't managed to get like broad base of users in 10 years of like documentation, of videos, of tutorials, of conferences, and all this kind of stuff, and they still haven't got a broad base, I'm not going to start going with Erlang RED going, all right, I'm going to start doing it all again, just try and get it. I'm sort of kind of piggybacking onto the Node-RED, saying, okay, so Erlang RED, it's just like Node-RED. So once you've understood that, you can easily come over to Erlang RED, but don't expect me to teach you how to use Erlang RED and then go to Node-RED, right? Do it the other way around. That's fine, right? So part of so I rather develop the tool than market the tool in a certain sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think it raises an interesting question you said about like, this is for, Node-RED is visual programming for JavaScript. Erlang RED is visual programming for Erlang. and I don't know the answer, but I wonder how many Node-RED users choose that it's JavaScript versus it's just a tool. I mean, actually, I came to Node-RED 8-9 years ago, probably now. And I was mostly a Python developer at the time. I did a bit of JavaScript for the front end, but I was a Python dev, and so actually now I'm doing Node, but more because of Node-RED. So does the underlying language matter in a visual programming tool? Or to most of the users? And that can be both good and bad, but it's is it more a case of should we be positioning it as to where Erlang RED is good, where solutions where maybe Node-RED or the JavaScript type Node-RED is not quite the right fit for this because of the some of this concurrency type issue or whatever you may have of your workflow. So as programmers we're always kind of, this is the language, but actually what's the use case, what's the business problem, user problem that the user's trying to solve, and then what's the appropriate tool for that. And that a language is just a tool. These arguments with AI that it won't really matter because we won't have all these high-level languages because AI will generate everything in assembly or whatever. I mean, let's not go there, but it does make the point of the language is a means to an end. Not the end. And
I would say, Sam, I mean, my idea would be that visually programming is like a different concept, and the language underneath the language doesn't matter. I mean, that's the ideal. I mean, that's for me as well. I mean, the point is to say, okay, I want a programming language that's visual, that anybody can use, right? And that they don't care about the underlying language. But as we know, the function node in Node-RED, and I ported the function node to be Erlang code in Erlang RED. So if you use the function node with JavaScript and Erlang RED, it won't get very far. But the thing is, you soon reach that point where you have to say, okay, well, how do I do this visually with all the nodes that I've got? I can't really get that done. Or it's like 10 nodes where I could take 5 lines of JavaScript, right? And
again, the function node is a really interesting debate, I think, in Node-RED, and as to when should you use it, or in visual programming generally. But again, think about it, when should you resort to a function node? And to me, it's almost a last resort. I purposefully try not to. And I see some people who literally just have Node-RED flows, which is like, well, I've seen some people with Node, which is one function node. They've got like an HTTP node, a function node with 200 lines of code in the function, and an output node. And I'm like, Express, anybody? Just one web server, But it's what people understand. And again, it's this: what should be a node? What should be in a function node? When should you use a function? And I also kind of like the challenge of always trying not to use the function node. And can I do? I start off with a mental process of, can I do this with the built-in nodes? No. Okay, is there a third-party node out there that I can package that I need to get to do this? No. Okay, I'm going to probably have to write a function node. I'm going to have to do this in a function. And again, I still try and often I'll break the function, use multiple function nodes. And I'm not try and keep it small, keep it to that concept of a function in JavaScript. And it's these habits, and we don't really have these design patterns, or they're not commonly shared and educated to people out there. And it doesn't matter, but maybe people.
But I think this is a very interesting question, because what's the difference between N8N, if that, then that, and automatic? And there's a lot of visual tools and also Blender nodes and stuff like that. Each has their own specific abstraction level, right? So N8N is very high level abstraction. You have services that you're connecting services together, but you don't have the concept of a switch node. You don't have programming elements. So you can only do certain things with N8N, right? On the other hand, Node-RED is low level, where you have a switch node, which is an if statement. So you have this very low level form of node programming, right? And this is basically the visual program has this problem of saying, okay, what function and how low do we go in low level? And if you look through, if you see you go through the history of visual programming, you'll see there's a lot of attempts being made, and no one's really got that sweet spot, right? No one's got that perfect level of abstraction where you can say, okay, you can do this with it, and it's easy to continue to doing that, right? So it's easy to integrate a bunch of services, but I can also code a Linux kernel with it. I mean, one of my aims is to visually code a Linux kernel, right? Why not? You know, this is visual programming. It should be able to do that, right? So, and people look at me and go, what? Why? And it's like, because it's visual, because then someone else can look at it, non-program, go, okay, so this is how the Linux kernel works. Wow, crazy. Yeah.
A few years ago, how I got really into Node-RED was when I was at Nexmo, Vonage and things, and I moved into a role where I was really looking at visual programming tools for Vonage, for the APIs and stuff. And very early on, so I was looking at a whole bunch of the platforms out there. Node-RED was one of them, and what should we do? And I used to draw this line on a whiteboard, and it was, at one end you've got capability, at the other end you've got complexity, and it's a scale. And all visual programming tools sit somewhere on that scale. And I think it's always a trade-off between complexity and capability. So I used to then start explaining, okay, right, so we've got if this then that, which was kind of popular at the time. Things are going on. So this is probably at the bottom end of complexity. This is the simplest, it's one in, one out, hook two things together. But it's pretty limited in complexity as to what you can do. You'll soon get to scenarios where you can't really do that. So you need a more complex tool. You need a more capable tool. So you have to bring in the complexity. And at the other end, you've got Node-RED, which is probably right up into the complexity end. Really, it's programming rather than automate. And really, because where does automation stop and visual programming start in this sense? Zapier, I think, is still a fantastic business automation tool. And I mean, at the time when I did the integrations at Vonage, we did two integrations. We had Zapier and we had Node-RED, and that gave us a pretty broad coverage of most use cases in a programmable platform. And the sales engineering guys loved it because some customers, they were like, Zapier is brilliant. We can do the one feature the customer wants. We can do this one little integration, blah, blah. Or then we've got, so I gave them some briefs. Okay, start off with Zapier. Here's what you can do. But if you find it getting too complicated, then you need to move to a different tool. And again, it's the right tool for the right job. Yeah. So you've got this scale of tools, and I don't think you'll ever get one tool that will be great for the, hey, I just want my phone to ping when I get an email kind of automations and a Linux kernel.
You see, regarding this stuff, that when we talk about the Erlang OTP itself, for example, you do not need to care about the tools for the scaling this stuff, etc., because all this stuff are available from the box itself. So you can build the clusters, you can make distributions and the communications between of the servers. You can build a tons of the different servers and communicate to the cluster in the one machine or in the one LAN net, or they can be run it and place it in the different places. One in the US, and another one in the Europe, another one in the China, for example, and they will be communicated and collected, built to the some cluster.
It isn't so much about. It's more about the kind of the integrating with services like third-party services. Yeah. You're just trying to bring two APIs together in a very simple mapping way versus introducing complex application logic.
Yeah, but I unfortunately, because of time, I need to draw a line on this fun discussion.
I was just going to say, okay. Okay.
No. But I think this has been really good. I think there needs to be a part two, but more focused, so that we can sort of ensure that we head in the right direction. But this, I think, is, and again, it's drawing on all your experiences. I mean, Sam, you've referenced Nexmo and Vonage and all the cool work you were doing there. And I remember that. So it's great to see sort of that rearing its head and stimulated by what Erlang is and why people love it. That supervisor, Vance was clear. it's his programming language for life. So once he experienced that, he was done. I don't need anything more than this. But anyway, thank you so much for taking the time. This was a very insightful discussion. I don't think we have any firm conclusions, but I think we have mutual understanding on that sort of complexity, capability, decision matrix. And I think it's to the point that you made, Jarrett, really early on about, it's training. It's helping people understand the options and, workflow based programming. But anyway, thank you so much. I'm going to get this written up and get it out as soon as possible. So have a great day, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yes, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.